The first type of democracy we will discuss is direct democracy. Direct democracy is when citizens vote for a policy directly, without any intermediate representatives, including a council member, a House representatives, or even a member of parliament. When the government has to pass a particular law, or decide on a public policy, it goes to the people, who then vote on that issue, thereby deciding the fate of such a law or policy. Under direct democracy, people can even raise issues themselves, as long as they have a substantive consensus on such issues. Furthermore, with direct democracy, even taxes cannot be raised without public support. The next type of democracy we will discuss is representative democracy. Representative democracy, otherwise known as indirect democracy, is when people are afforded an opportunity to vote for a person who will represent them in Parliament, or in the House of Representatives, or in the Senate, or even in the Municipal Council. This is the most common form of democracy found across the world. This small group of politicians are supposed to represent the needs and thoughts of the people that voted them in. The next type of democracy is presidential democracy. In a presidential democracy, the president of a state has significant power over the government. He or she is elected either directly or indirectly by the citizens of the state. The president and the executive branch of government are not indebted to the legislature, but cannot fully dismiss the legislature under normal circumstances. Likewise, the legislature also cannot remove the president from office, except in an extreme case. The president also has the power to veto a law, to prevent its passage. However, if lawmakers can muster enough votes, they can override the president's veto. In a presidential democracy, the head of state is also the head of government. Countries like the United States, Argentina, and Sudan use this type of democracy. A democracy that gives more power to the legislature is called a parliamentary democracy. The executive receives its democratic legitimacy only from the legislature, that is, the parliament. The elected legislature, usually represented by the parliament, elects the head of the state, such as a president or a prime minister. The elected members of the legislature also have the power to remove such a president or a prime minister at any given time, using a vote of no confidence. In some countries, the head of state, which is the president, differs from the head of government, which is the prime minister. In some cases, the role of the president is ceremonial, such as in the case of India. Under this system, presidential ministries, known as ministers, are elected and appointed by the president, and possess different degrees of power, depending on the powers granted to them by the president or the prime minister. The next type of democracy we will discuss is authoritarian democracy. This is when only the elites are a part of the parliamentary process. The individuals of the state are allowed to vote for their chosen candidate, but regular people cannot stand for elections. Therefore, in the end, it is only the ruling elites that decide on the various interests of the population. The exact opposite of an authoritarian democracy is a participatory form of democracy. There are different types of participatory democracy, all of them which are aimed at creating opportunities for all members of the population to participate meaningfully in the decision-making process. Participatory democracy empowers the disempowered by breaking up the country into small networks, with the objective of empowering community-based grassroots politicians and governing structures. This type of democracy relies on deliberations and discussions, rather than merely voting. There is currently no known country that practices this form of democracy. While the theories behind this type of democracy are valid, implementing this approach in real life is challenging. However, many social movements, such as the international Occupy movement, the Bolivar movement in Venezuela, and the Narmada Bachao Andolan in India, organize themselves around a model of participatory democracy. The next type of democracy is religious democracy. This type of democracy is where secular laws and people come together to create principles of governance. The most common example is Islamic democracy. Under Islamic democracy, politics are governed under Islamic law. The leaders of this democracy must also follow the teachings of Islam. The people, however, elect these leaders to their positions. The last type of democracy we will look into is social democracy. Social democracy has been described as the evolutionary form of democratic socialism that aims to achieve socialism gradually and peacefully, through established political processes, rather than through social revolution, as advocated by revolutionary socialists. In this sense, social democracy is synonymous with democratic socialism, and represents its original form, that of socialism, which is achieved through democratic means, usually through parliament. Social democracy aims to improve the lives of people living in a free and democratic society, with a well-regulated market economy. Social democracy may further focus on providing free education, or free health care, so that people don't have to depend on profit-making corporations.